Hello, this is Mark Denham, radio presenter, audio producer, podcaster, and voiceover. Today on the audio journey, I want to talk about the importance of having the right equipment for monitoring. By that, I mean either your headphones or your speakers. Now, you could have PC speakers, which are no good for what we're about to talk about. You could have Beats by Dre, which are no good for what we're about to talk about, because what you need if you are serious about producing music or indeed voiceovers, podcasts, or anything like that, what you need is monitor headphones or monitor speakers connected up to your audio interface, to your mixer, however you are getting the sound. You need to have monitors. And I don't mean like the screens, the PC monitor or whatever. I don't mean that. I mean the speakers and the headphones. Why is that? Well, just like microphones have frequency response patterns built into them, and you could sound entirely different on two different microphones in exactly the same environment with exactly the same EQ and compression. Headphones are the same. Beats by Dre famously launched by saying, now you can hear the music as the artist intended, which blatantly tells you that they have colored the audio. They've changed the frequency response in their headphones. I will admit I have a pair of AirPods that I use with my phone. I have a pair of Beats by Dr. Dre that I use if I'm listening to something on the computer and I don't want to use the speakers. But if I am working, I will plug in my Beyerdynamic DT100 headphones. Now, let me show you here. If we go into this, you can see here, this is the frequency response of a pair of Beats by Dr. Dre headphones, and you can see that this has been incredibly tailored, meaning you get a higher response here, slightly lower here, and then back up again for the highs. So the low end gets a big presence boost. The mid-range is cut, and then back up to the tops again, up to the highs. You get this huge presence boost again. Now, why does that make a difference? If we go in here, filter and EQ, and we'll use the parametric equalizer because this is the easiest way to show you. Here is our audio, which in this case is a voiceover.
You're listening to the All Day Breakfast with Sam and George.
Now, it's my job to apply EQ to that as the producer, among other things, to make that finalized and ready to be sent out to the client. This has already been done and gone. I'm just using the raw voiceover here as an example. Now, in order to EQ, you are going to go in and you're going to create something, let's say, that cuts off the lows if you're doing voiceover, and then maybe works with the frequencies in your voice. This is the sort of curve that I would start with if I was editing my own voice. But if you look back to here, you start, when you set an EQ, with a flat line, and in the parametric equalizer, you have this low frequency, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a high frequency. You also have the high pass and you have the low pass. In order to set that, you will listen to the audio and you'll look at how this looks here. That's your EQ line.
You're listening to the All Day Breakfast.
And there you can see the frequency. So I'm quite high here, just around 80 odd hertz. I'm quite high there. And there's a bit of audio down there as well. I'm going to want to get rid of that because that is just unwanted bass rumble. And you can see here, not too high up at the top as well. So fairly safe from sibilance. What would I do with that? I would go in and I would move these up and down until I get the sort of audio that I want. So I would normally use the FFT filter to do the bass roll off, but for the purposes of this, I will use the parametric equalizer. So I've rolled off the bass now.
You're listening to the All Day Breakfast.
And then I may want just a little bit of a reduction here in the mid-range there. So I may just want to drag this one, not that one. Not that one. I want to drag the one that's next to it, number 2. May just want to drag that down just a little bit there. So I can either do it by dragging on the point, or I can just bring it down just a little bit here.
Sam and George.
And
you're listening to the All Day Breakfast with Sam and George.
Maybe just a little boost up here in the top. So as I say, you can do it by dragging that up. And let's have a little listen again now.
You're listening to the All Day Breakfast with Sam and George. You're listening to the All Day Breakfast with Sam and George. You're listening to the All Day Breakfast.
Okay, so we'll call that done. We'll call that done. It does need a little more work, but we'll call it done. And you have created the EQ curve there, which you can then go on and add compression, etc., and other effects. That's done using my DT100 headphones. Why is that so important? Because when you get monitor headphones or monitor speakers, they do not have that frequency boost and cut like the consumer ones do, especially the Beats by Dr. Dre. Boost up the bass and they cut out the mid and then they boost back up the high again. You cannot possibly get an accurate EQ if you are already discolored by the processing on the headphones. Here you start with a flat line, which is great. If you're using monitor headphones or monitor speakers, you genuinely are hearing a flat line in your ears. But if you're using consumer headphones that have colored, as they call it, the audio by adding bits in certain frequencies, cutting out other frequencies, what you're finding is that you're not starting with this flat line and you're not hearing what is actually happening. What you're hearing is what the headphone manufacturer wanted you to hear. So you may have this big boost up here, like the Beats by Dre, and then you may cut out the mid-range altogether and we'll take down the mid-range, then we'll boost up the highs again. You may have a little bit like the Beats by Dre. You may have that as your starting point in your ears, where actually in your digital audio workstation, you have a flat line and you can hear now.
You're listening to the All Day Breakfast with Sam and George.
Now that has massively discolored what you're hearing in your ears when actually the sound is like this.
You're listening to the All Day Breakfast with Sam and George.
So if you are going to be doing any production of voice work or of music or anything, you need to be starting with a flat line. Yes, if people are listening in Beats by Dre, if people are listening in AirPods or any other headphones, many of which are available, they will hear it with that frequency response on that we saw in the graph. But for you as the producer, you have to start with this neutral flat line and you have to add, or even up for add, or cut down for cut the frequencies to suit the voice or to suit the music that you are working with, knowing that in your ears you are hearing the actual sound without any enhancements actually in the ears. And all you're hearing is what you've recorded and what you've done in terms of adding EQ, in terms of adding compression, what you've done, not what the headphone manufacturer wanted you to hear. So, I mean, as I say, if I am on the radio or if I'm doing any voice work or podcast production, I will stick on the trusty Bayer Dynamic DT100s. They've done me well and they sound just as good as the day I got them, so I'm perfectly happy with them. There are many other headphones that you can use. Look for studio monitor headphones when you're buying them. And the same with speakers. Your PC may very well come with speakers which make the music you listen to perhaps sound great, but if you are producing, just remember they may very well have a frequency response already built into them. So they'll enhance some, they'll cut others, so it sounds what the manufacturer wanted you to hear rather than what's actually being heard. Remember, if you are buying speakers or if you are buying headphones, studio monitor headphones or studio monitor speakers, and then you will be able to produce knowing with 100% confidence that what you're hearing that's been recorded and what you're doing in terms of EQing that is actually what's happening, rather than compensating for what your headphones or your PC speakers, if they're consumer headphones or speakers, have done to the audio already. That'll wrap up today's audio. If you have any questions on headphones or speakers, as always, if you're watching on YouTube, stick them in the comments down below and I will get back to you. Also, you can go to my website, markdenham.com, where the entire audio journey series is, and I can answer questions there too if you go up to the top and use the contact tab. Thank you so much for checking out today's audio journey. Get yourself some decent monitor headphones or monitor speakers and go and make some amazing audio.